Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I saw a question come up in my comments from someone who appeared to be a reasonably experienced lifter who asked, hey, I don't understand. If you're rotating these maxes all the time when you're using stuff like the conjugate method, how do you actually track your 1 rep maxes? Now, to anyone who's run this system, they're probably laughing and they're like, wow, what a silly question. But what people need to remember is that not everyone understands this system. Not everyone has done it for a year. And so maybe they don't understand how that works, and they don't understand that it's actually dramatically more simple than most people would think it is. Because when we're rotating all these movements, it looks really complex. Bands, chains, board work, different bars, right? It looks really complicated in terms of tracking maxes, but it's not. First of all, you write your maxes down. Okay? You write your maxes down. And you actually know what your squat, bench, and deadlift are probably just about any given time. Even if you haven't done a max bench, a max squat, and a max deadlift for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, if you're used to using this system, you will actually know what your 1 rep maxes are. You will be able to predict it within 5 pounds. And that might sound ridiculous. People say, how could you know what your bench is going to be if you haven't done the normal bench press in 12 weeks? And it's really, really simple. We know exactly what our ratios are on all these other lifts. Anyone who's been running them a while knows. So let me give you an example. Let's say that you hit a max bench of 315 pounds. Okay? And then around the same time in the training phase, you rotate through a bunch of other exercises. Let's say that when you use, 30 pounds of bands, your max is 300. Right? All you can do is 300 on the bar when you go against 30 pounds of bands. Okay? When you use 30 pounds of chains, your max is 300 also. Notice how conveniently that works? And that's about right. That's about how things work. All right? When you use 60 pounds of chains, your max is 290. And you write all this down. You test your floor press, and you can do 305. You max at about 305 on the floor press. When you do a 2-board, you get 335. Okay? So we now have 6 other exercises that we know our maxes for. That we know them we're about the same strength at a 315 bench. That we as an individual, we can 2-board 335. We can 30 pound a band and chain both 300. We can floor press 305, so on and so forth, right? We know this. We're used to it. So you start rotating through your different maxes again. Okay? And let's say you get around to the floor press and you hit a 315 floor press. Well, you knew that when you had a 315 bench, you had a 305 floor press. You as a person, you as an individual. What's your bench at now? Well, if you were to test it, you'd probably bench 325. Let's say your 2-board press had been 335 when you were benching 315. You managed to squeeze out a 345 on the 2-board when you test it again later in the training cycle. What's your bench at? 325. And people will say it can't be that simple. It can't work that way. Yeah, it is that simple. It is that simple, and it does work that way. It absolutely works that way. And if you don't believe me, run this system for a year and a half, and then come back and tell me it doesn't work that way. I'm going to call you a liar. How do I know this? I run this system. I have multiple good friends who run this system. I have a pretty significant number of clients and former clients who have run through this system. When I say significant, we mean in double digits, right? You can consistently predict your maxes Once you find your personal pattern and you write the maxes down, you can consistently predict what your strength is all the time. Now, benching is easy. It gets a little more nuanced with the others, but we could do the same thing. You do the same thing. I know that for me, as a general rule, I can usually back squat 30 pounds more than a box squat. Right? 20 to 30. And that's off of a higher box. What about a lower box? Could be bigger. Okay? Could be bigger. Well, how do I know this? Well, because when I did a 502 box, I walked in and had not done a single back squat in 9 months, and I hit a 522 back squat. Did some other stuff, got a 522 box, and ended up hitting a 552 squat, probably a hair high. Some feds would pass it. 30 pounds. Okay, so we start to learn our ratios and our different box heights of how they affect it. Okay. And your box height's very important. If you're inconsistent in box height and you don't know your different strengths at different box heights, then, well, you're going to have problems. You probably need to learn that and track it. But you start to get predictable patterns off of box squatting. You can't get predictable patterns off the back squat because it's too ambiguous in the range of motion. A box squat, you can always control the exact box height to the half inch. You know if you're on an 11 inch, 12 inch, 14 inch, 18 inch box, whatever you're on, you know it. Not hard to track. And if you can't figure out how tall your box is, then the idea of remembering to write down a number is probably too much for you. You might need to do something less complicated. But then again, stupid people can run this system too. Just fine. They just need more coaching. Okay. So box squatting is the same way. Well, then we can start doing our different bands, our different chains, our different bars. We start to find our personal ratios. Now it gets really hard when you get into very large amounts of band and chain, which is why I'm pushing away from that with my box squatting and lifting and everything else. I'm only doing 10% and 20% of my maxes. Now I do more on speed work because you're supposed to do 25%. But this gives us a consistency also. It makes it easier to track maxes, not because we know how many pounds of bands or chains, but our percentage of the max. And it becomes very easy to find our exact ratios. It becomes very easy. But even then, let's assume you're doing different squats. Let's say you don't have a bunch of bands and chains and you're rotating through different squats. Well, what do people do? Box squat? They can have boxes of a couple different heights. I don't care where you train. You can build boxes of different heights at a commercial gym. Okay? You stack plates to sit on. You could even have one for your high box. Now your high box is going to be dramatically more. Perfect example. One of my guys used a bench at home the other day with a high box, an 18-inch box, which is what a bench is. He got 495, right? First time he's ever high boxed. His normal box squat is 425 to a below parallel box. His back squat is 445. So he knows in the future that his squat to an 18-inch bench will be 50 pounds more than his max squat. Okay, he knows that off of a below parallel box, there's 20 pounds difference. It's 20 pounds less than his back squat. And we've been consistent in testing that. All right, and that's one of my lifters who we've tested his back squat 4 times since I've had him. He's gone like 405, 415, 425, 445. Okay, so you can test a couple different several different box heights, up to 3 different box heights. We can have dead pen squats. You can do a pause squat. And we have a lot of different squat variations, and you'll always know your ratios. You'll always know your ratios. Example, that he's a perfect example. He knows that his low box is 20 pounds less than his back squat, and his high box is 50 pounds more than his back squat. You can test those at any point and find the pattern. Now, I don't remember his ratio on the pause squat, but I know that it's less than his back squat. So if he PRs on a pause squat, we know his back squat's gone up. Okay. These things are easy to track. They are very, very easy to track. You just write everything down and you track a separate max for each of your big lifts and you know the difference between what they are and what your classic lift is. So you'll never not PR on a classic lift if you wait to hit it till you know that you can PR. Alright guys, well that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.